Hey, Mama Elsa here. The Artemis 2 has landed today, and y'all know I live under a rock. Um, I've not been paying much attention to that. I'm just trying to keep, the wolves from the door and the water on and the power on and food on the table and things like that. But everybody is sharing their memories of the Challenger and of Columbia. Um, I'll start with the Challenger first. The Challenger was huge. Everybody knew about it. It was huge. It was on everything. We were so excited that Sally Ride was going to go up. Had no idea until this year that Sally was lesbian. Didn't know that. Um, and we just knew she was a teacher, and we were all excited about that. So I was in Miss Bagley's fourth grade class, and so we went to Logansport High School, well, Logansport, and Logansport Rosemont all the time. And they only had one television. And so the teachers were hemmed up in the teachers' lounge watching the launch because the TV wasn't but, you know, yay big. Um, and they would come back in and give us reports and stuff. Oh, they're fixing to go off, And Miss Bagley ran back in and she started crying. She was crying and she just ran through the room and she grabbed something and then she came back out and then she went back to the thing, went back into the teacher's lounge. We didn't know what was going on, and they finally came back in and they told us that the Challenger had crashed. Didn't know it had blown up, but it had crashed. And I kind of did the calculations in my head and figured that if they crashed over water, they probably all drowned. And in the back of my science book, there was a picture of an African American gentleman, and he was on the Challenger. And it had the date of his birth, and in parentheses, and in pencil, I wrote the year. And I just closed my book, and I knew what had happened long before anybody else figured it out. They sent us home, and I remember might have been Dan Rather, might have been Walter Cronkite, I don't remember. Um, explaining with models what had happened to the ship, and it wasn't until later that I saw the video footage, and I was like, "There's no way anybody could have survived that." And there were, for the first couple of days, they were, searching in the water and the ocean and trying to find everybody, and my girlfriend who had wanted very much to be an astronaut uh, never mentioned it again. And shuttle launches just became a thing. It was like a taxi service. We knew they were going up to the International Space Station and they were refueling and all that kind of stuff. Um, and of course, as a Star Trek fan, I was excited that they had one named Enterprise, and then Gene Roddenberry was going to have his ashes taken up on one of the shuttles. And I don't think it actually went. I think finally they took some of his ashes when somebody went to an International Space Station through another route some years later. Um, I was living in Chicha with Columbia, and I don't know if I was dating Jay yet or not. Um, Jay and I got together in '03, and so yeah, we've been together 20, 23, 23 years this year, and married 22. Laying in bed, and I heard. Now I live in Keachop, which is close to Logansport, which is 100 miles from Nacogdoches. And I'm laying in bed, and all I hear is bam, 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 bam. And I was like, okay. No, actually, it wasn't that. It was bam, bam, bam. And I was like, and it sounded like a well had blown. And if you live in an oil producing area, you know what a well sounds like when it blows. And it usually, you know, rocks trailers and rocks houses and blows out windows and does all that kind of stuff. And that's exactly what this did. Um, and I ran to television because I thought, you know, they would have something on it. Of course, there was no real internet at the time. There was AOL. You've got mail, and that was about it. And the guy on Channel 12, which was our CBS affiliate, he um, he had a radar map up, and you could see the street was straight, and then it branched off, and it branched right about each other. Now you got to remember, as the crow flies between Nacogdoches and Keachop ain't that far, and they were so high up. Um, the majority of Columbia landed in Nacogdoches, so much so that they put a NASA recovery station there, and for the next few years, every now and again, somebody would be out way back in the woods hunting on their property and find another piece. Or they'd be boating, or when the drought happened in 11, they found more pieces out in places that had water, that the water had gone down. Um, Trigger warning. Um, there were pieces of the astronauts that landed in Keachop, and Ben Zelaski's mama's house, a gentleman's heart fell, and he was one of the Jewish gentlemen who was on board. And they covered it. I believe there were special prayers that were said, and it was recovered. I'm sure it was returned to a family and cremated and all that. Um, that house has a special history. That house happened, come to find out, to have been owned by my stepfather's great grandfather. And in it lived my stepfather's grandmother, who was a nurse, Mimi. So, I didn't know that I had a connection to that house. Um, my uncle came out of his house in Logansport thinking it was an earthquake. Um, my cousin in, well, she was living in Carthage Center at the time, but she came out of her house and thought the same thing. Thought that they were having an earthquake, so they all ran out of their houses. That's how strong it shook. and Logansport is 50 miles from Nacogdoches. Yeah, probably 50, 75 miles from Nacogdoches. And Carthage is 45 or so, 45, 40. So, yeah, we were definitely all, we were grieved that such a horrid thing had happened. And it was a little, my community used to be very smart. Used to be the kind of community that doctors and dentists and lawyers and stuff came out of. And that's tanked in the last 40 years to people who don't believe in vaccines and don't believe in science and stuff like that. So they were right on about halfway through that journey, and some of them understood the science behind what had happened, and a lot of them didn't. Um, some of them thought, I don't know, that they thought that the government officials were intrusive. Probably the best word. But they understood the need to recover that which remained and care for the dead. So that, I think, was the only reason that they didn't cause a fuss. But after a while, they did. They kind of did. I believe there's a museum down there, or plates honoring the Columbia. So, yeah, it is indelibly tied in my memory as much more than Challenger. Challenger, of course, was something we saw on television, but this was something my extended community was involved with. So, may their memories continue to be a blessing for all of those who were involved, um, whether they have gone on to the next world or whether they remain with us. Amen. Amen and amen.